Get Warrior Tough, Mental Training 101 with Andrew Wittman and Dutch Coleman. And now back to Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back at it. Use the hashtag Get Warrior Tough or hashtag GWT. Dutch is at the Dutch Coleman. I'm a Warrior Tough PhD. All right, Dutch, we got to get back into this because I'm just so it's very exciting to see when. Here's what's exciting for me. When I can finally figure out what was going on in my life and then I can name it and now I know how to use it to my advantage and it's been used to my disadvantage prior. Right? That's what's exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, when we figured this stuff out. Okay, so first off, we started with the little monkeys. They didn't like it. Was okay if they got a grape or a cucumber, but they didn't like it if the other one got a grape and the one that got the cucumber went nuts. Then we went to 12-month-old babies. They liked they preferred fair-minded cartoon animals instead of the unfair ones. They liked the hero. Then what they found out is that humans, as we get older than 12 months, that we actually have an aversion to getting less. Yes, we all get that. But we also have an aversion if we got more than other people.
Oh.
They call this is crazy. So they call it the advantageous inequity aversion. Or I'll say it like this. In some situations, we give up whatever the big... so I always use this example, right? So there's a big piece of pie and a little piece of pie. And I tell my kids, hey, you guys pick whatever, right? And so I'll have one of them pick first. And, of course, which piece do they get?
The small one.
Right. And this is the advantageous inequity version because they don't want to be seen as the greedy person taking more. This is the F-bomb.
Yeah.
People don't want to be seen as being unfair.
Now, I guarantee you that's the surprising part of the discussion to most people listening. Because while people can then think back to what they would do, without thinking about it, you would assume that someone will grab the bigger piece.
Mm-hmm.
Until you think about it and you think about yourself and what you've done in your life, then you'd be like, you know what? They're right. I've often done that where I don't grab the biggest one. I don't grab the advantageous position because I don't want to seem that way. And then it dawns on you. This research makes sense.
Right. And so now if you were by yourself, Dutch, and there's a big piece and a little piece, which one you get?
I'm getting a big piece.
Right, we're getting a big piece because ain't nobody's right. So this is the whole. So there's a disadvantageous inequity aversion, and there's also an advantageous inequity aversion. Now, so we don't like it when we get the short end of the stick, but we don't want to be the one choosing that we take the bigger part of the stick.
Right.
Right. So we're like, oh no, because then it makes you feel bad about who you are. Now, this is very interesting stuff. So what they did is now they moved it up to kids. They put two children down in front of a table, and what they did is they offered them, candy, but they offered it unfairly. One got one piece and the other got two. Or, if that happened, the child could pull a green handle and flush all the candies, and everybody got none. What do you think happened?
I think that they, of course, I looked at the research, so I know.
You know what happened.
but
they're pulling that green. Yeah, you would have. What would you think beforehand?
Yeah, beforehand, I would have thought. Beforehand, I would have thought that the kid would have taken two and let the other kid get one. That's what I would have thought beforehand.
Yeah. Well, now the older kids, they did that. The older kids would make sure they didn't want to be seen as getting the advantageous piece. But the younger kids, if they were going to be on the short end of the stick, they would just dump it, pull the green handle, and nobody gets anything.
Mm-hmm.
They would rather nobody get anything than somebody else get more than them. Now, these are just young kids. Yeah, they're just young kids, man. I mean, that's not taught to them.
Yeah. And that's funny to me because it seems like, and when I'm looking at myself, I would say, okay, I'll take less so that we get something that I don't mind taking less.
Now that happened 66% of the time with older kids.
Right. But in thinking that way, I would have never thought the option was to dump it all. So when you put that in play, I can see where that option would be taken because instead of me getting less, no one's getting anything. But you don't think about that on your own until you look at the research and you say, oh, that's an interesting option. And you're seeing that kids are selecting that option.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So what they found out, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but they found out that the 66% that would say, well, I'll take the lesser amount. I'll take the lesser amount because I don't like to be seen as someone who got the advantage on other people. They came from Canada and the United States, Western developed countries. Kids that came from third world countries, they didn't care. They did give me the candy. They didn't care what it looked like. I want the candy.
Right.
Except if they thought they were going to get the short, if they were going to get the short end of the stick, if they were only going to get one, nobody gets any.
Now that's something that I would have gotten incorrect as well, because I would have thought that someone from a third world country would say, hey, I'm getting at least one. Even if they're getting two,
right,
I'm at least getting one because I'm hungry or I want this treat. I don't get this treat that often.
No.
I'm getting something out of this deal. So I would have gotten that one incorrect as well.
Right, but what they found out, it really has nothing to do with the inequity. It has nothing to do with the fairness. It has nothing to do with the candy. What it has everything to do with is it signals a demotion in your social status. That kids rejected the disadvantageous offer because their social status would have been demoted. They're not seen as equal or as fair with the other person, so they're a lesser citizen by taking the smaller offer.
So I would take equality at 0, then inequality at 1 and 2.
There you go.
That's interesting. That's why I really like this study, because unless you looked at this study, I doubt that many people have really focused and thought about this. And again, the options that are available for me more glowingly than others is the option to dump it all. I mean, I think that adds an interesting aspect to this whole discussion.
Right, and so here's their conclusion, that it's all about me and how do I come off in this scenario.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The importance of social hierarchy in rejection. What's the number one fear of all human beings?
Rejection.
Rejection, and the number one need is acceptance. So
acceptance.
Right, so the social hierarchy and rejecting a disadvantageous unfairness been studied all over the place. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the country. It does. In fact, that's even in like the monkeys. It doesn't matter. Primates, dogs. If it's a disadvantageous unfairness, they'll dump it. But what they found is within humans, it ain't about the inequity. It's more like they said, akin to spite. That if I can't get this, if you're getting more than me, we'll go scorched earth. Nobody's getting nothing.
Wow.
What your mom used to say, cut your nose off to spite your face.
Spite your face, yeah.
So instead of getting 3 candies, you get 3 candies, Dutch, and I get 2. I'll pull that green handle and we ain't getting nothing. How you like me now?
That's amazing. You know, again, you think about making things right as a person have given a choice. But again, I got to go back to this. What's shocking to me is the choice of dumping it all, and that people would choose then either side gets nothing rather than you get 3 and I get 2. That nothing is an option that's actually viable. I mean, that's very interesting.
Well, and that's why most negotiations, I'll say a lot of negotiations will break down before we call it the 11th hour or before we're running off a cliff, because people would rather be like, you know what, we'll do nothing before we, and you'll see that when you get 2 sides that can't come together, that they'll go scorched earth.
Absolutely.
Now, the interesting thing is only in the Western developed nations do we have an aversion for not looking fair. Like, we don't want to get the big end of the stick, so we'll always take the lower end of the stick if there's somebody else in the room. We'll take the smaller piece of pie if there's somebody else there. 66% of the time, people will do that. And
I don't mind that. I've seen myself do that because you look at yourself as someone who can do. I'm okay with a little less. Like, that's fine with me. I don't need this.
Because you're fair-minded.
I'm okay.
You're not
exactly.
selfish.
Exactly. So that's something where I can see myself falling into that category.
We've been taught that. We've been taught
yes.
that in our society, in our culture, right? That it would, to be fair-minded. Here's
But
what they
can't. Yeah,
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say I can't. I still can't wrap my mind around the dumping of all though. But it makes sense once you think about it. But I tell you, I'm just going back to the point that I would have failed that if I would have been given a chance to guess what the research said, because I would have thought, no, they're not going to dump it all. But once you think about it, you can see it. It all becomes clear.
And so this scorched earth thing, and I got to tell you, it's here's what they found. Here's the conclusion. And then they did this they did another study in 5 and 6 year olds. They gave them that option. They found out, dumping it all, that we have a natural aversion to getting less, not to unfairness. It ain't about fairness at all. It's about I'm getting less. Because here's the thing. In those kids from the third world countries, at no time did they say, no, you take the smaller piece. When they were offered the bigger piece, they just took it. 66% of the time in a Western culture, we didn't want to be seen as unfair, so we'll either dump it or I won't take the bigger piece. Because in our culture, to be accepted in our society, you must be fair-minded. We have to see you as fair, because that's the F-bomb. If we don't see you as fair, there's even the hardened criminal, right? Because they interrupted me. Hey, I didn't interrupt you, man. Was that fair? That's not fair, is it? Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's not about fair. On the one hand, we don't like getting less, but on the other, we don't want to be seen as somebody who's not fair. Not that we're not fair, it's we don't want to be seen as somebody who's not fair.
And there's a fine line. I know we only got about a minute left, but there's a fine line between fair and unfair. But when it comes to these examples, it's like we find it and we're willing to stop short of it just to make sure we don't cross into the unfair. Like we're willing to stop way short of it just to make sure we don't get anywhere near that unfair realm. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, we've been taught that since we were kids in the Western culture. Now, we're coming up on a break, but think about this. When we're doing diplomatic or military negotiations with somebody who isn't from the Western culture, Russia's not Western, they're Eastern. We're trying to look fair because we want to look fair. They don't care nothing about that. They'll go scorched earth before that. They don't care whether they look fair or not. That's not how they're brought up. It's not in their culture. So you got somebody at the table negotiating wanting to look fair with somebody at the table who don't give a nothing about being fair, about looking fair. They're all about it's going to be how I want it, or I'll pull the green handle and nobody will get anything. It's really hard to negotiate with somebody. If you think that you want to be seen as fair, and that's all in our DNA in the Western culture, you go up against somebody in the Eastern culture, that's not, they've never even heard of that, right?
Well, I got something after the break. I'll let us go to the break, but I got something after the break to address that as well.
All right, listen to the Get Warrior Tough radio show with Dutch and Andrew. Buckle up, man. It's a crazy one tonight.